All righty. Super excited to be here with everybody tonight. And I thank you. I know it's late for many of you as well, but for joining and joining live. We're also recording the session because I know there are at least 20 to 30 people who have said, I'm interested, I want to know more, but I can't join the session tonight. So we're recording for all of you as well. So here's what I want to do for those that are here with us live. There are so many slides in here. Tara Short and I delivered this presentation last year. We went on the tour and did this 2 years ago. There are so many slides in here. I'm going to do my best not to exhaust every single slide, and I'll talk a little bit about how the next 45 minutes or so will go here. But I'm going to share the slides with everybody who's here, and for those of you who are not here. But what I'd love to do is give you a flavor for this trip, give you a little bit of, the background of Kilimanjaro, what the tour is like, what to expect. But I think for me, what is the best is when I'm open to interruption. I'm open to you saying, hey, listen, I'd love to talk about this. I might tell you that particular topic is coming in about 1 minute or so, but I just want the interaction to take place as well here too with the group. So there we are. So I shared with a few minutes ago with some of you that are on the session here a little bit early. I'm Tracey Seward. I am a tour leader for Green Edventures. I just got back from leading a really cool and fun trip, and we have one individual that was with me in Peru just last week for 2 weeks. And those are the types of tours that I lead for Green Edventures. I'm typically in that. We've got one coming up in Chile and Patagonia at the end of this year. It's the Mount Kilimanjaro. It's the Peru. Have done a number of different hikes in Peru as well. But that's the stuff that gets me excited. I'm also an executive coach. So this isn't necessarily a full-time job, but it is probably my favorite job that I do right now, working with Green Edventures. And as some of you may know this about me as well, I just stepped out of 30 years in corporate America. So I did a lot of these fun things with Tara. And that is a little bit of what I'll share with you here in a minute. This is the dream. I'll go backwards on Green Adventure here in a second, but this is Tara and I. And Tara and I have been friends, and we would say we get into shenanigans together around the world. This is exactly where Kilimanjaro started. It was the two of us in Africa, and we looked at each other in this van and we basically said, okay, so what's next? And it was, do you see that mountain right over there? We want to go climb that mountain together. And that's exactly where this trip started and the idea started. And this is a little bit about, for those of you who've traveled with Green Adventures in the past, my first trip with Green Adventures was with my daughter as a high school, I want to say she was a junior, she might have been a freshman, to Trinidad and Tobago. And so that was my introduction to Green Adventures. I've been on probably 11 or so different trips, either leading them or participating in them. And I know as well, many of you have done some of the trips as well with Tara over the past. And I'd love for those of you that are here live to share some of those trips, where you've been, how many trips you've potentially taken as well with Green Adventures in the chat, because I know some of you are definitely not new to Green Adventures. Green Adventures goes back to 2009. I think this is when Tara ran one of her first trips, and her focus started and she's still working with student groups and working with schools. And again, that's where I met Tara. But what Tara is also very much focused on, and I would say equal parts of her business, are doing women's trips. And she has co-ed trips, and she also has private tours and private trips. And so there is a lot to do with Green Adventures. I listed here a lot of the locations that we go to. This is not 100% exhaustive. I think I forgot to put on here Chile that we're doing, as I mentioned, at the end of this year. And so trips are just continuing to be added to the Green Adventures adventure. So let me jump in, and I'm going back and forth a little bit here as I'm on with you live. Feel free to jump in, to interrupt me. I'm not watching chat every single second here too, but just jump in and interrupt me if you have a question. So you caught the hey Tara, what do you want to do next? And that was exactly what we said in 2019. And we went on this trip together in 2023. And that's what I want to start to share with you is a little bit of what to expect on this trip, what we went through, and exactly how we'll set up the 2025 trip. And I think this slide is pretty cool if you look at it. How many people are here? There are 71 people that were with us on the 2023 trip. I think the number of participants that went on that trip was between 10 and 11, maybe. But this is what I think is incredible, right? So you're going to have porters, you're going to have cooks, you're going to have guides. It was 11 hikers. Here's the number. But what we also had was we had individual porters, right? So we kept our load very light on this tour so that, as you'll see some of the pictures coming up here shortly, so that we could focus on the trek. We had a light pack on that was just our water, sunscreen, sunblock, whatever it was. But we also had individual porters plus the other porters that were carrying our food and all of our sleeping gear, etc. So talk about a village that helped 11 of us get to the top of that mountain. That's exactly what the team looks like. So what I want to do is I want to take you a little bit through the geography. I want to take you on the route because people always ask, there are 8 routes out there. Which route do you take and why do you take that route? So we'll talk about that route. We'll talk about the trail. You'll see photos. You'll get a feel for what it was really like. There's a few videos in here. And I also threw in here as well, what is important about preparation? Cheryl, this is where, some of the altitude stuff we'll talk about, what to pack, what does physical fitness look like, etc. So, I think for some of you I know have been to Africa, but just as a like, where the heck is this mountain at, right? So it's Tanzania. And as I've been to Africa myself, probably 5 or 6 times, when I go to Africa, climbing the mountain is one thing, but the other thing that I think is pretty cool is also spending a little bit of time, and this would be an option as well too, on safari if you choose to do so, either as a reward on the front end or the back end. Not required, but that is also something that we do offer as well. But to just get a feel for where Tanzania is at on the eastern side of Africa and where Kilimanjaro is at. And what you'll see it borders, of course, Kenya, right, and Tanzania. And what's really cool that you'll see as you're summiting this mountain and as you're winding around this mountain, which we'll talk about, you'll see into Kenya, which is pretty cool. Kilimanjaro, if you've seen any of my posts and you guys have studied and know this as well too, it is the largest freestanding mountain out there. It is a dormant, definitely. I think the last eruption was 360,000 years ago. So no worries of any eruption here, but a stratovolcano. And it's comprised of 3 different peaks. And the peak that we take, of course, is the tallest one, which is Kibo. But you can see, and I think this will show it a little bit better, right? The 3 different peaks that make up this mountain. And again, the peak Uhuru, Kibo, which is the one that we summit, is the tallest at 19,341 feet. So let me jump in here now on the route that we take. And again, feel free to jump in here too. I can't see everyone's faces at this moment that's out here, but jump in and ask questions if you like. But I think the thing that is most interesting, again, and everybody asks me when I tell them, we've done this and or we're going to do it again, which route did you take and how fast did you do it? And I think this is important because this is the longest route. The Northern Circuit is the longest route. It's the newest route. In my opinion, it's the most beautiful route. And it has the highest success rate. And a big part of the reason for that is that 9-day, easing into this mountain, you acclimate every single day. And I remember, Tara and I had this conversation. We'd get to a point and it'd be 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever it was, 2 o'clock. And we would look at it and we would say, gosh, that really felt kind of easy today. And why can't we go a little bit, further? And that's the overachievers in Tara Short and I. But that's very, very intentional and very deliberate. taking this mountain slow and acclimating and, rising and ascending and then sleeping low, is really important. And I'll say the other neat thing, and you'll see this in here too, is spending time at campsite. And the views that you will have at the campsite at night are some of the most incredible views I've ever seen any of my travels, on this planet. It's like a snow globe. And so the appreciation of the route, it happens, I think, for a number of reasons. It's acclimation, but it is truly also enjoying this hike. And so just, sharing without getting into details here, right? This is essentially the track that we take, and you'll see that it moves pretty slow. And we'll talk about the different climate zones that it moves through here in a moment, but it moves around the mountain. And it does connect it first with the Lemosho route. So I think it's like the first 3 days, we're on the same route, but then we are off and on our own. And that's the other beautiful part about this Northern Circuit, is that it is the road less traveled, if you like. It is more private. You feel like you own this mountain, by and large by yourself until you get to summit night, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But a beautiful route. The other thing that I think is really interesting in sharing with you the climate zones here of Kilimanjaro, look at how many there are, right? So we arrive into Arusha in Tanzania, and that's, meant to be the civilization piece here as well too. But each day you will move through, over the 9-day hike, you will move through each of these different climate zones. And it truly is, it is rainforest as it starts. And I think you'll see some photos here too. Like, we're in, short sleeve shirts and tank tops, and you've got the typical Tanzanian, monkeys that are swinging from the trees. But then we move pretty quickly right into these different climate zones until we summit, and we actually hit this the alpine, or the glacier level. So you actually see over the course of the days, and we may have some photos here that pop up here very shortly, but you can see right here, the rainforest. You can see the difference in climate zones. Sometimes it feels like it happens actually before your eyes. And in some cases it will, because you'll hit 2 climate zones in one day. And I think what we will talk about is also in here, as I do talk about packing, and don't worry, there is so much preparation in terms of what the packing list looks like over time as well too. But just putting the packing point out there, is you can see what we're wearing, maybe from a short sleeve shirt to a tank top, and then ultimately we're maybe in a much heavier puffy down jacket, sometimes the same day. And so as we talk about what is in our pack, that's a lot of what will be in your pack, but the pack that will be carried as well by a porter, right? So the pack, I'm in the middle, blue backpack here, and the only thing in my backpack that I'm hiking with that day is my water and my sunscreen and toilet tissue and those kinds of things. But my porter is nearby, that if I need my heavier jacket, or if I need to derobe, my porter is very close by. There are questions so far? Let me flip back to all of you. Keep going.
Keep going.
All
This is
right.
great.
So the trail. So you can see this one. We are in rainforest at this moment. Let's see if this video actually works. But this is for those of you who've traveled in Green Adventures trips before, I don't remember which day this was, but if you can hear this video here. Can you hear it? Sorry.
Yes.
This is the typical. Why this is important and why I put this in here, I think, is there are days, and you're going to see a couple more videos here. There are days when you're like, man, I can barely put one foot in front of the other. This level of energy from the team never, ever, ever stops. I watch these videos again today, and I'm dancing around in my little office here as well too, but it's incredibly motivating. And these guys, our local guides, are doing this trek multiple times a week, regularly. I don't even know what their numbers are. Their level of energy is so incredibly motivating for all of us. So it's just inspiring. So still in rainforest as I keep going in slides here as well too, but you can see, and this is actually, I'm pretty sure I'm in the same clothes. This is the same day, right? We're starting to, get out of rainforest and we're moving into our next eco zone. This is probably one of the first days where we saw this mountain. You don't see it the first couple of days. I feel like it's probably at least 24, 48 hours. But as soon as you peek and see this mountain, this is exactly what you've been waiting for. And it looks like it's so far away, but you're not that far away from this mountain. So again, I couldn't resist to put this photo in. And what's going on here? We did some typical stretching and yoga moves as we took off and got ready for the day's hike. This I love. This is what you're going to see. You are, if you can see and tell, you are in and above the clouds here. And at night, this is just where it again is just like a snow globe. And as the sun sets, because you will arrive, we have arrived at our campsite here early enough that we're able to enjoy time together, a nap, getting ready for the next day, walking around and taking photos, right? You're able to enjoy, the scenery from, still daytime and into nighttime. This I wanted in here as well too, because the majority of it, if you can see by the photos so far, up until summit night, the majority of the hiking it surprised me. It's incredibly flat. There are a couple of days where you've got a little bit of this scrambling. I remember we had somebody that, struggled on this one. And I mean, the guys were putting her on their shoulders and ensuring she got over this. But this is not an extreme level of scrambling on this hike, but there is some of it here, which is why I wanted to put it in here. So what is important tonight? I want to watch time here too, but I wanted you to see summit night because I feel like this is one of the things, and some of you may, if you've already been researching Kilimanjaro, you already know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect, but the first time, this summit eve, right? Everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, and what does this look like, and what are we talking about, and whatever. This is exactly what we went through. We arrived at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on summit eve. We relaxed, we had our snacks, we were getting ready for the next day. And the next day is incredibly long. And I'm going to talk about that because it is the toughest part of this hike. But this is our guides, obviously getting us ready for what is to come. This is the nighttime. This is exactly what it looks like, not only on summit eve, but it will look like this on multiple nights as we're continuing to summit. So and this is summit eve. This is like 11:30 p.m.
Green Edventures. Okay, one team. One team.
One team.
One dream.
One dream.
Adventures. Let's make it. Green
So we are leaving. I think we were up at like 11 p.m., leaving at 11:30 p.m. And that is where you start the ascent. It is a tough one. It is 11:30 p.m. that we left Kibo Hut. And then we arrived, I want to say that Gilliman's Point, Stella's Point are pretty close. And I want to say it's sunrise here. It was probably around 6, 7 a.m. There's a choice that they gave us. And you might be asking, why did you leave at 11:30 p.m.? There are a number of reasons for that. And they gave us a choice and we all said, let's do it during the night. You really can't see. You've got your overhead light. Everyone's got their overhead lights. It's a little bit of mind over matter because it's a long hike up and you are scrambling in some of the scree. Sometimes you feel like you're taking 3 steps forward and 1 step back because you're moving really slowly. But there is something about this mental load that we all agreed and said, this is the right thing to do, is to leave overnight. And we also wanted to see the sunrise, which is actually one of the most incredible sunrises I've ever seen as we hit the peak. Here's another one. This is at the summit. And I wanted to show you because this is our guide. And I wanted you to see how slow even he is moving.
Even me, I want to sit down.
He's still talking, but everyone is moving really slow.
For the good success, brother, for the good success, do it slowly.
That's me, really slow. And I think that's why 11:30 p.m. and we take our time and we move together. We don't leave each other. There's always oxygen that's being carried at all times with the guides as well too, in case anyone would need the oxygen. But we are one team that is together. So you can see here too, again, Uhuru Peak is the top. And so if we do the math, right, and it all depends on pace of the group as well too, but we hit that peak. That is the tallest point. We hit it at 8 a.m. The thing that most people also don't talk about is the descent. So they don't want you hanging out at the top of that mountain for a very long period of time. They want you to start moving down. So of course we do our regular photos. You probably have seen a lot of snow sometimes at the top of the mountain, but we didn't have a lot of snow. You could see the glaciers, you could see some snow off to the side, but we obviously, as you can see, did not have a lot of snow. The descent is also, it's tricky. And in some cases, some people say, well, that was not hard. That was pretty easy. That was tough for me. And this gives you a feel of the coming down on the scree. It's like sand. It just, I kept thinking if I could ski, if I learned how to do something a little differently, it might have been a little bit easier. But it's not, it definitely, the ascent is one thing, but coming down is another thing. But that all happens in one day. So we were down, I don't know if the time is here too. We were probably down to our campsite. I want to say it was like 3 o'clock. So again, leaving at 11:30 at night, taking our time to get up, and we were down to our campsite that day at about 3 o'clock. That is just our bit of celebration to say that we all did it. So I'm going to take a pause. I want to come back and I want to see your faces again here as well too. I'm going to go into some of the preparation. I'm going to talk about altitude. I'm going to talk about food, meals. Any questions so far on just the journey?
So Tracy, can you hear me?
Yeah, Edna.
Yeah. So we'll need a variety of clothing, and I know you'll probably go over that and there'll be an extensive list, but looks like, I mean, once we get to the top, we're going to need some heavy coats, right?
Yeah. So don't forget, and I use the word and I'll use it again, Arctic.
Yeah.
It is,
Okay.
and it's cold. And lessons learned. I have lots of lessons learned. I think for me, and let me just take a step back and talk about packing list. The packing list is incredibly, incredibly thorough. I think for all trips, for those of you who know Green Adventures trips, usually
Yeah.
very thorough. Those trips, those items are not on the packing list unless we've been on the trips and we've said this is what we need. So you'll have all of that, Edna, as you know, in a packing list. You won't use, though, I'm just going to like now fast forward to summit day, right? You won't use the majority of what you use on summit day on the trek. It is summit day that really does change everything. And by the way, when you start down on summit day, you're ripping those clothes off. By the time I got down, like I had my Arctic gear on, I'm down in a tank top and in shorts at the end of that day. Right. And so this is where, again, the porter comes in so handy to say, I need my, 800, count jacket off. I need my polar gloves that look like oven mittens. I want them off. And so that is exactly what will happen on summit day. We talk about the sleeping bag that's needed. We have the rentals as well too, if anybody needs rentals on gear, but the sleeping bag, you're going to want to probably a -5, I think is what we recommend on sleeping bag. So that we've got the details of all of that. I actually have a little bit of that in a slide coming up too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I am flipping back to some chat as well too. And Debbie, great question on how many miles do we hike a day? The total is between 50 and 60 total over 9 days. So you can start to back into what that sounds like. Some of the days are going to feel really short, as I said. they're going to be like, gosh, I think I could go a couple more miles, and you could, right? But this is all, very deliberate in terms of acclimation and making sure that we've got a 100% or as close as we possibly can to success rate. Okay. Should we talk a little bit about preparation or any other questions so far?
This is great.
I'm sure more will come. And by the way, more will come after today as well, too, as you start to settle into it. So, I know I've already been interacting with a lot of people out there who've said, oh my gosh, what's it going to take for me to get ready? Can I get ready? And I'm going to tell you right now, my answer is yes. We've got plenty of time right now to prepare ourselves for this. The way that I like to look at this, and I'm going to just start with altitude right now, because I know, that's already come up here too. And that's a concern with any high altitude trek. If you remember, even the zones, and I'll share the slides with you as well too. I mean, we're going to start pretty low, and we're going to end up at 19,000 feet. And that is an extraordinary elevation gain over 9 days. But the way that I would start this with anybody, people are like, gosh, should I be training with a mask? Should I go to Denver and, train in high altitude? I'm in Chicago at whatever, 500, feet above sea level. I didn't go train anywhere. But there are a number of things that I'll talk about that will help you with that training. But the way that I would also talk about altitude is, if you're comfortable taking an altitude medicine, altitude sickness prevention medicine like Diamox, I highly recommend it. Referring to Peru, we landed at 11,000, almost 12,000 feet in Peru. There, you just land at, a moment of the potential of being sick immediately. But the Diamox is intended to also help you with that as well. But let me talk about Peru or Kilimanjaro one more time. We acclimate slowly. I don't want to say that Diamox is not required. I took it when I did it because I didn't want to have any challenges. But the additional thing about Kilimanjaro is that you're acclimating every single day that you're ascending on that mountain. We're all ready for the altitude issues. As I mentioned, there is always going to be oxygen on our guides. They're going to be there if you need it. We did have one individual on summit day, summit evening, right? And again, that night is just grueling. You're intimidated. You've got so much gear on. You didn't train in that gear. You just had that gear on for that one day. And she had a challenge. And ultimately, what we decided was likely a culprit to the challenge. She had her backpack, this area of her backpack, too tight. So even the oxygen that she was attempting to get into it, she was constricted. So this was, again, all of us loosened this strap up here. We administered some oxygen for her, and she summited that mountain, and she is a powerhouse because she's already summited Kilimanjaro again this summer. So yeah, I think so. That's altitude, and so much more that we can talk about with altitude. There's so much more I'll talk about before the trek. We'll talk about it during the trek. We'll talk about it daily on the trek. Fitness training and preparation is also important. The ability to walk, hike 6 to 8 hours a day. And I do put in here a 35-pound backpack. Your pack is likely not going to weigh that. The majority of your weight is going to be in your water. You're going to want your water, and you're going to want your water with you and on your back, but it isn't going to be 35 pounds. So we can probably change that number a little bit, unless you don't have a personal porter and you do want to carry everything. But I think what's really important is we will walk definitely 6 to 8 hours a day, likely every single day. That mileage will change, day over day. I would recommend starting 3 to 6 months before the hike. We've got plenty of time. We're there now. And I think when I think about the types of training that I do, and maybe even some pro tips that I'll share with you as well too, it is always a mix of cardio. It's always a mix of strength. I love to mix in yoga, right? From a flexibility standpoint, you will get stiff over time. You've hiked a number of hours. You've rested in a tent, you're going to get stiff. So the yoga also helps with that as well. and breath work. And I think for me, what I like to do is this is just also the nature of who I am. I always sign up for something. I've either got some, I don't, a 5K, I've got a century ride, I'm doing some challenge with somebody, because it's the way that I'm motivated to actually just really stay on my training and fitness. So it's a recommendation. And what I'll do is, as your tour leader here, I always set up, if you want, a Strava group so that we can actually just be together. We can, high five each other when we do workouts. I will absolutely help with training plans, because I'm going to be training as well too. So it's always good to have a buddy and a partner as we do this. We all need some support and accountability along the way. So that was, a little bit of the, some of the preparation. I think I'll keep going here, and then I want to make sure there's plenty of time, because I'm sure questions are percolating. But I also wanted to show, and give you a little bit of insight into what does food look like? What do the tents look like? What about water? What about the bathrooms? So you've got some photos here of tents. This is me, and I'm sharing a tent. So you can see the size of the tent. Jennifer H., you'll probably remember from Peru just 2 weeks ago, it's the same type of tent, a 2-person tent. There is the ability to upgrade to a single-person tent. The water will be boiled, but what you see here, for those of you who think this looks like a Star Wars lightsaber, it is a SteriPen. We all had our SteriPens. We'll have plenty of SteriPens. We just did it for for ourselves. I wanted to make sure that my water was always sterilized. So I do recommend it. So bringing the SteriPen along. The bathroom is a small little tent out there. It's private. There's always toilet paper. They keep those bathrooms clean, but it is like our own, and it's our own. It is our group's and no one else's. It's our porta potty while we're 9 days on the mountain. The meals are always incredible. And I would say the same thing about every location that Green Adventures travels to. They are incredible. And there is so much food. You will never be hungry. There are snacks. The meals come sometimes in 2, 3, 4, 5 courses, right? There's just always a lot of food. And what is important, to the accommodating word here is that we accommodate, of course, for any of the dietary restrictions. We're going to ask that up front. We're going to make sure that we account for that. In Peru, Jennifer, as we moved out into our last trek, right, we stayed all vegan, because that was important, and that was where the group was at. And I was very much honored in any respect, whatever it is, gluten-free, vegetarian. We will make that happen. So funny, I don't have the packing list here. I had to put it in here. The packing list, you will have it. You will have access to it as soon as we get the trip confirmed, because you will want to start to look at what's in your closet, but also start to buy probably some things that you may not have in your closet, and or to rent. And I think what's important is always watching the sales, right? REI or Backcountry or Dick's, whatever sales are going on is exactly what I'd say. Oh, I'm missing I need some socks. And I'd watch for the sales. So the packing list, it's just so very thorough. This is Tara here, and what she's got, we're going to have limits, right? So there are weight limits, and we'll talk about what that weight limit looks like, but that does keep you, that keeps you at your most focused, minimalist, what you need, and not packing 25 jackets, because you won't need 25 jackets. And I won't go through all of this, but you'll have it offline. But it is not exhaustive. And I should have written this on this slide, but what you can start to say, what do I need? What do I need to pack? What are those essentials? And I think on every one of the trips that many of us take, as well, the rain jacket, rain pants, you're going to want the insulated down jacket. There's going to be a heavier jacket that you're going to want, and or layers for the Arctic level. Good hiking boots, gaiters, we'll talk about what backpack is good. We're always going to be of that mindset that if you don't need to go buy new, don't go buy new. But we will also tell you what we believe is incredibly important for these treks. My gosh, I think I'm close to the end. I'm right at the how do I sign up and what does this tour look like? And then I'm going to fully pause. So we just today, I think it's just today, this trip is now live and out there on the Green Adventures website. I've got the link here as well too. The cost of the trip is $49.50. We've got a deposit of $300, and then that is valid through December 15th. But there is also, if you're watching the Green Adventures trips right now, we're offering a 5% discount, and I can share that with all of you offline as well too. But there is a 5% discount code that we're running through mid-November that would be applicable to the trip cost here as well too. That doesn't include airfare. This is why it's always good to sign up for these early. If you use miles, like I use miles, I want to use the least amount of miles that I possibly can when I sign up for these trips. But it does include includes all of your food. It's going to include the transfers. It's going to include 2 nights on each side of the trip. So we arrive in Arusha. We're in a hotel on the front end. We're in a hotel on the back end. Celebratory dinners. So you don't have to think about anything. And that's the beauty of these trips.
Tracy, I have a question.
Yeah. I'm ready to
So,
pause. So let's jump in.
okay. So, you talked about a possible safari either on the beginning or the end of the trip.
Yeah.
How much additionally would that cost?
It's a great question, Edna. And Tara and I will work on this because again, it may be that I'll tell you what Tara and I did this last time is we did 24 hours. That's all we did. And you guys may want a whole lot more than 24 hours. So we can work on that with you, depending on how many might be interested in it to, a couple days. It looks like X so that we can get the best price for everybody. And the question sometimes people say is before or after. And that's something we would talk about as a group too, and anybody that participates. I did mine before because I arrived just a little bit early. Also done it after. It's like a celebration afterwards. So I think that the after is pretty cool and pretty special as well too.
Okay.
And then
Thank you.
we'll get back to you on that one as well too, as we confirm the trip.
Okay.
Jennifer.
Do any of your other like the Uganda trips, do they line up with this one at all?
It's a great question, and I actually didn't look at that. They may.
Okay.
It is a
I think
super
Uganda
question.
is in April. I think Uganda is in April though,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So there's a Uganda, Tanzania that are connected in the spring, but there's also another co-ed trip that we're starting to lay out too. And I don't think that trip is confirmed yet either, but Jennifer, it's a super question.
Okay. And also with the gratuity, does that include our personal porter, or do we do that separately? Pay for them?
So that's a question. That's what I'm going to have to get back to you as well too. That's a great one. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer right now. I'm going to tell you what I remember though, Jennifer. That number was so low that I said, this is not negotiable for me. It was such a small number, and they are incredible. They are beside you the entire way. Yeah. So let me come back to you on that one as well.
Have you guys ever given any thought to creating a package that a person can buy that covers, like, here's your sleeping bag, here's your polar jacket, those types of things?
No, but we can.
It would just be easier,
Yeah.
right? Rather than having everyone try and get right gear and maybe not.
Yeah. What we'll talk about is what we can offer from a rental perspective. Some people just choose not to, they want to pull their, I've spent a lot of money on a sleeping bag. And so I definitely hike with that sleeping bag everywhere. But if you don't want to spend the ridiculous amount of money on a sleeping bag, you don't. So we'll share what we offer from a rental perspective. And so it could, I guess it sort of kind of can be the package, Cheryl, but a lot of people choose to bring their own stuff. I think I'll tell you the other interesting thing is on my last time to and I'll give you guys all kinds of tips like this as well too. And I'm sure many of you have traveled so much, but my baggage was lost. All of it was lost. All of it was lost. I had
Mhm.
my like what do you normally do is you carry your boots in your backpack, in 1 day's worth of clothing. That's not going to last on a Kilimanjaro 9-day hike. And it arrived the night before we departed on the trip. So for me, I was ready to have to rent everything because it was going to be everything. And so we know exactly how to do that in case something like that happens as well, and where to get that from on site. And I will tell you that the beautiful part about that was I had an AirTag, an Apple AirTag in my suitcase. And so I think that if I wouldn't have, and I was communicating with where it was lost, I'm not sure I would have gotten it in time. So that's another pro tip.
Mm.
Put your Apple AirTag in there. It's worth it.
Tracy, I had a question on the sleeping bag. This is Debbie.
Yeah.
You only need that -5 degrees the one night you're near the summit, or do you need it? Are the nights cool?
Yeah. The nights are cool.
Okay.
You'll love it. You'll be so happy. Like some of those nights are cooler than other nights, and you just like can't wait to get in that cozy, warm sleeping bag.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not too hot. If that's like
I'm
the
usually
question you're
hot.
asking, it is not too hot.
Okay.
And if you want, you unzip it a little bit, right? Or there was not one day. I'm usually hot at night too. There was not one day that I like got out of my sleeping bag.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. What else?
I have a question about shots that we'll need,
Yeah.
before we go. Do we just go to, I mean, do you guys recommend what shots we should have, or?
So Edna, you haven't traveled to Africa yet, have you? I think we've talked
No,
about
I
this.
have not.
Yeah.
I have not. Yeah.
So I've traveled a lot for my work over the course of the many years, but I'll tell you what I do is I go to Passport Health. You can go to your regular doctor. I love Passport Health personally because I walk
Okay.
in and basically I'm like, I'm going here, and they're like, here's your booklet. Here's what you need to think about. Here's the shots that you need, etc. But your doctor can do the exact same thing. I can't remember exactly at this moment, Edna, what is required that you might not have.
Mhm.
But you can certainly find that on any of the passport type health or your doctor as well too.
Okay.
Yeah.
CDC maybe too, huh?
CDC, of course. Yeah.
Mhm.
I want to
Yeah.
jump in and say yellow fever, but don't quote me on that because I think that was just for Peru. And maybe
Mhm.
that wasn't even
Okay.
required for Peru anymore.
We needed
Okay.
yellow fever for Kenya when we went there, and that was a problem. There's a lot of red tape that goes along with it because they don't have a lot of the vaccines. So you need to kind of get in the queue, get signed up, get all your travel documentation, including like any visas that you need. Your airline tickets have to be issued. Like we had to show everything and it was within a couple of weeks of leaving.
But
Wow. So
not to get the yellow fever shot, right? Or did you?
To get it, yeah.
Oh, I don't remember doing that, but it could be, mine was probably five years or more ago.
Yeah, we were about 10 years ago, and we were going into some rural places.
Yeah.
So that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
I think it might have released on that one because I got my yellow fever 3 years ago, and I just had to show that I was going to Peru. I had to show the itinerary. But I wasn't going to any place that was really massively affected. I wasn't even close. I mean, I just did the really touristy stuff. So I think they might have released some of those huge restrictions for proof.
Okay.
But Cheryl, it's a good point though to get started on these things and start investigating, right? There,
Mhm.
you also mentioned an important point. There's going to be there's a visa for Tanzania. I think it's $100. I think you can do all that online. I mean, we'll help coordinate all of that as well too. Yeah, and I still do. I'm just going to put the plug in for those of you who are comfortable taking Diamox. I'm going to put the plug in for that as well too. That's the altitude prevention medicine, but that you definitely want to see your doctor and make sure that you're cleared and doc is comfortable with that as well.
Yeah, Thora mentioned that too. Recommended
Yeah.
that. Remember Thora from Iceland?
I was just in Lagavegr, so I just ran around with her in Iceland. Yeah.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
great.
She's a good
Yeah.
guide. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The weather in Iceland on this Lagavegr trek that I led this July rained and rained and rained every single
Oh,
day.
no.
We did not have one bit of rain, just putting it out there in Tanzania and on the
Oh,
trek.
good.
So it was beautiful. It was muddy one day when we hit on the way down. So it must have rained at some point when we returned and came down through the rainforest. It was super muddy. There was no rain on us at all.
Wow, it's great.
Yeah.
So we were in Kenya the same time of year that this trip is going to Tanzania. And it's wonderful because the rain has stopped.
Yeah.
It's lush, it's green. All the babies are out. So I would highly recommend a safari before or after if you get an opportunity.
Oh, good.
Everybody's frolicky and happy in the trees. I agree. I mean, even as you're hiking, as you go and through rainforest, 2 different times. I mean, the monkeys are just swinging, and it's just everybody's so happy. So it's a good start to the entire trek and a good ending as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask this because it hasn't been brought up. I had a friend probably 20 years ago. He did Kilimanjaro. And he made it all the way up there, and he got to the summit and he started coughing up blood. And the 2 Sherpas basically ran him down the mountain to get him below a certain elevation. So what do you do for those types of medical emergencies?
Yeah. So Cheryl's going to be the exact same thing. That's not happened, but anything like that could happen, and everyone is prepared for that. And you hit it spot on the head. It is about getting out of that altitude as fast as you possibly can. And that's why, I said you want to hang out up there. You want to celebrate. You get up there, you like, oh my God, it took us, it feels like 3 days, to climb, just that one night. They want you down. They want you out of that altitude. What I remember as well, and none of our group had this issue, but just watching people when I could finally see, because it was, nighttime as we ascended, but as we're coming, as we hit it, it was sunrise and we started coming down. There are people that, you've got guides that are carrying, and they're kind of walking like, they're like a rag doll, and they're moving as fast as they can through that scree to get them down.
Okay.
That is exactly what would happen. There are, like these big, I don't know what else to call it other than like a bed that you put, if you're on a ski slope and something happens to you and the little van or the little snowmobile has to come get you and they pull you out on the gurney or whatever it is, those things are there and up there in case that's needed as well too. Oxygen is on all the guys. Yeah. The interesting thing about that, if you remember what I showed you, I was like, that might be interesting on the sand and the scree. It might not be so bad, but when you hit rock, that would be horrible. Yeah.
Mm.
Can I ask about that ascent? What are you missing by doing it at night? Are you missing views or and also is it what's the trail like? Is it rocky or
yeah.
Yeah.
You and I saw it in Peru. We saw, I don't know if you heard me say, this is exactly what it's like.
Right.
And what are you missing is such a great question, because that was my question. I am a big FOMO person. And so for me, I'm like, what am I missing? And it looks like the moon. It's somewhat boring, I would say. There isn't much that you're missing in terms of scenery, because what you've seen in the scenery is what you saw. When you hit the summit though, and you see it all, and it's just before sunrise, that's exactly what you want to see. What you see are what feels like millions of headlights, because all the routes now are starting to converge at the peak. And so you just watch it. It's a little bit intimidating. And one of the things they said to us, and I don't know that it would intimidate me, it may not any of you as well, but they were like, it could be intimidating to see how far you've got to go, right? And what the terrain looks like, that it might mess with your mind as well too. That was part of the rationale. So in terms of missing anything, you're missing a bunch of sand as you walk up it. You hit it at sunrise and you get the view.
So it's kind of, so the terrain is like the rockiness of
It is
what we saw. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you
Sand,
see that well enough? Okay.
Sand, scree, and rock.
Okay.
Headlight is critical. My headlight went out 5 minutes into departing. the
Oh.
campsite at 11:30 p.m. Talk about panic. I didn't carry a second headset. The guides gave me a headset. They just kept transferring their headsets to me. You want headlamp. You want a headlamp. You want a strong headlamp. You've got this, group of individuals that are right in front of you as well too. And then the 70 people around you, right, that will light your way, but you want a headlamp. That's a must.
Is that typical for other routes too, is to make the ascent in the evening?
It feels
or
like
overnight?
I don't know if I can answer if that's what the majority do. It sure feels like that's what we saw.
Okay.
And I feel like the decision we made was that we wanted the sunrise at the peak. That was a big part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I feel like what I'm weighing in here on is the intimidation factor of sand scree and ascending that might feel like it goes on forever. Was a big part of what they told us as well too. Yeah. It's just really cool, and I'll never forget it. Just looking, and you look for miles and miles and miles, and you can see all of these routes, the 8 routes that are converging, and just what feels like millions of headlights. It's not though, but there's not that many people on the mountain.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
How did you keep your cell phones alive to take pictures for the whole hike?
Amazing question.
Yes, good one.
Yeah. So that is so important for me. And I have so many, I need a video. It didn't happen if you didn't video and you didn't track. Like, I got my Garmin watch always going. It's always charging. I got my I took, I think I had three blocks, 3 bricks with me. And I'll go back and look at how many I took. And I've got exactly the ones that I took, and I never ran out of power, by the way. I didn't use, some people use like the solar charging, Garmin watches or whatever. I didn't have one of those. And you go on airplane mode, because there's a moment when you don't have a signal. You have a signal a lot on that mountain. I'll never forget them saying, "Oh, there's Wi-Fi all the way up the mountain." And I'm like, I don't think there's Wi-Fi up the mountain. Come on. But you had signal a lot. And that was also pretty fun, just to stay in touch with family while you're, pretty high up there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Good question.
So can we sign up tonight?
Yeah, the link is live.
Okay.
It was 2 hours ago. I said, I don't think this link is live. And the link is live, and I can share that with I actually will, I'll put it right in here as well too. And I want to share the discount code with you as well, Edna. This is, I'm here. If there are questions, and I'm going to stay. This is okay. Are you putting it there already? This is awesome. Thank you. I'm going to stay here if there's still questions. I know I want to be respectful of time for those of you on East Coast as well. It's, I know, 9 o'clock. I'll stop the recording, but I'm here. I'm here in email. I'm here, in whatever way, because it is a big decision. And it's one you won't regret, though. I will tell you that right now. It's just, as I'm looking at the photos again tonight, I'm like, oh my goodness, I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
Tracey, what's your email? Can you tell us that?
Yeah. It's pretty simple, and I'll type it here. It's Tracey@greenadventures.com.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me stop recording here, friends, as well. I'm going to put that in. No, I can't find that.